Well, I mean, you got to get this. I mean, a decision is the ability to take action on resolving a question. And I always say to people, why don't I get what I want? And I say, well, you're probably asking the wrong questions. You know, why am I not where I'm supposed to be? It's because of this, it's because of that. I've got it all figured out. If this doesn't happen to me, if I can just get that break, and maybe you're asking the wrong questions. So the first thing we've got to do long before we decide, is make sure that we ask the right questions. Otherwise, we're going to hit frustration every single time. We can't have what is not going to be good for us. So thank goodness you didn't get all the things you wanted when you were 12, 15, 18 years old. It is a symbiosis. It is a connection with the universe. Your mind, body, emotions, and soul, when they connect together, that's when true, real decisions are made. And if you can have the power, and power means, can you believe it, means action. If you can have the power to be able to answer questions properly, you will be able to make decisions that last. So if I say to you, stop smoking today, why don't you stop smoking? I might come back with, I'm asking the wrong questions. And you probably need the smoking for a sense of certainty. So if I try and take your certainty away from you, or your safety, that's what it is to the subconscious. I mean, imagine living in a world where you made a decision and you could stick to it, a real positive, life-changing decision, whether it's a diet or exercise regime, or your meditation, mindfulness, reading books, taking 2 hours a day to gym, another 2 to make yourself cleverer and more articulate. So if we could really put those things into action through a powerful process of using body, mind, soul, and spirit.
Another incredibly important tool is making mindful decisions. Mindful decisions is something that you can master to make drastic changes in your life. Make better decisions, get better outcomes every time, only every time. So making decisions is something that we tend to do on impulse. We do it every day. We do it really, really quickly. And in fact, our brain becomes better and better at making quick decisions. As it learns something, again, it'll do it on automatic the next time. Ever lose your focus while you're driving? Forget that you were even changing gears, using a clutch? It's pretty much the same with your brain. Chopping vegetables at a meal, breaking up a salad, tends to happen on automatic eventually if you're not careful. And missing a moment when you have time as limited as we do is probably not the wisest thing we can do. Making mindful decisions means using first the thought, this is what I need to do, then a feeling, how do I really feel about this? What does it entail for me? So it's thought, then feeling, and then outcomes, action. What is going to happen if I do this? And normally we go into black and white, either or thinking. We have very dichotomous, two-sided brains. It'll either be this way or it'll be that way, which more often than not is not true. Normally there's hundreds of different possibilities that could happen. So making decisions and taking time to feel them through can also be an incredible tool to get you where you need to be. Impulse, obsession, compulsion, all have no part in decision making. So a tool we can really use. There's an old story about a king and a sage, which relates to mindfulness many centuries ago. It goes a bit like this. The king was in need of a wise man. He needed to make brilliant new decisions in order to rescue the village from a series of problems that he had not been able to fix. So he went into town, sought out the wisest man. It wasn't long before he met the sage, who was reputed to be incredibly wise. And he asked the sage to come with him, live in the palace, and help him make the decisions that would positively affect the whole village. So the sage couldn't really refuse, as he knew it was going to create a whole bunch of good. So he thought to himself quietly for a while, knowing that he could not refuse such a big request of the king. So he said to the king, "Okay, I will come with you, but on one condition. I'll come and live at the palace as long as you give me one room in that whole palace with one key where no one else can go in. And I do what I do in that room is none of anyone else's business. It's my business." The king says, "Well, what a request. I don't see any problem with that. Let's go." And off they went. The sage made beautiful decisions for the king. The whole village was lifted in a very short space of time, and things started to get better. Everyone, of course, loved the sage, and they loved the king as well. So things were going well until people started to gossip. The secret police were wondering what was in this room and why the sage would take some time to go in there every day, lock the door, and they wouldn't hear any noise, they wouldn't see anything, and out he would come alone. So they became really, really curious as to what he had in that room, and rumors started to spread. The king came to the sage and said, "Look, these are the rumors. We need to know what you're holding in that room." And the sage said, "Please remember, I came in on one condition, and I cannot change that condition." The king agreed with him, didn't see a big deal in it, and went away. But the secret police and all his council had a different idea. And the more they talked, the more curious they became. So one day, they got a second key, cut and made, and went into the sage's room. Both the king and the sage were alerted to this and arrived at the room at the same time to discuss what happened. The sage said, "Look what you have done. You've come into my room, and now I need to leave the palace. That was our deal." The king agreed and said, "We are very, very disappointed, but you can go. But please, before you go, tell us, why this room? It's empty. All it has is a few old rags as clothes in the corner and an old prayer bowl." And the sage said, "Well, king, I'll tell you." He said, "Whenever I needed to make one of those important mindful decisions for the kingdom, I would come into the room and I would put on my old clothes and I would take out my old prayer bowl and I would remember who I was, sitting in silence before I could make those decisions. And it would come to me with ease. Once I got the answers, after some time, I would come out of the room, go into the hustle and bustle of the kingdom and the palace, and share my ideas with you." So the moral of the story, of course, is the sage went into a quiet space long before he made any of these decisions. We definitely need to do pretty much the same thing in our lives. Anything without feeling behind it, without a second thought, and without having been made in a quiet space where it can be thought over and reflected upon, is probably not going to lead to the best consequences. We can learn a lot from the sage and the king.